Hey, Pioneers! Welcome to episode number 468. We're talking about lard for sunburn and SPF and what they haven't told you about skincare. What if the most effective sunscreen isn't found in a plastic bottle at the store? I think for most homesteaders, we're aware that that's probably the case. But did you know that it could be found in your cast iron skillet leftovers? Today's episode, we are going to challenge everything that you thought you knew about sun protection, skincare, and the humble jar of lard that I hope is on your kitchen counter. And if not, after this episode, you will have some lard and be putting it to use in your skincare routine as well as your kitchen. Today, we are sitting down with Charles Mayfield, who is a repeat guest on the podcast. And he is the founder of Farrow Life. He's a skincare health advocate, as well as a traditional remedies expert and regenerative agriculture. So, today we're diving into the unexpected but actually powerful benefits of using lard for skincare, especially when it comes to natural sunscreen and sunburn remedy. We're going to be talking about why commercial sunscreens might be doing more harm than good, the specific properties that make lard a natural skin protectant, how to prepare, apply it, and the surprising connection between sunglasses, sunburn, and your body's built in sun response. I share an experiment that I've done and things that I have changed going on a couple of years now, and the tremendous difference that it has made in regards to sunglasses and skincare. So, if you are ready to simplify your skincare, embrace ancestral wisdom, and maybe rethink what you reach for when you're going out into the sun, then this episode is for you. Well, Charles, welcome back to the Pioneering Today podcast.
It's great to see you again. We were just before we hit record, we were talking about this schizophrenic weather, and it's a good lead in for prepping for summer. So great to be here, Melissa. Look forward to the chat.
Yeah, me too. In fact, it's very sunny. Very sunny. It is very sunny out, but also very funny. Apparently, I'm putting words together here. Yesterday, I was potting up my tomato seedlings, so too early for them to go out. But we are having an extraordinarily warm, sunny days here for the Pacific Northwest, like 70 degrees. But then we're 26 degrees Fahrenheit in the morning. Just for context, this is what Charles and I were chatting about right before we started. And so yesterday, of course, in the full sun, and it was so warm, and so I was like shut it down to a tank top and was like, oh, it just felt so good on the skin. But as we get into going, it was such a contrast too, because I haven't had that. So it was like going from, very dreary, rainy, cool, cloudy days to all of a sudden like sun. And I have read some very interesting articles and also just like personal anecdotal experience on our skin and sunburning and sunscreen and all of those things. But the point being is, if you gradually expose yourself to the sun in the spring, like, outdoors, and that the rays and the way that they penetrate the skin and their intensity changes as we get obviously into midsummer when it's a lot stronger. And so that if you start kind of that gentle exposure, that your body will create almost like a natural defense. And of course, I'm very loosely paraphrasing here, can help create like a natural defense and build up. Whereas if you are never exposing your skin very much to the sun because of either clothing, weather, lifestyle, or conventional sunscreen, and then you're just out for a vacation in the summertime where you're totally just exposed and you haven't been at all, that can really contribute to sunburn issues too. So anyways, there's so many fun, I consider them fun, geeky things to talk about surrounding this subject. So I know you have a lot of experience with lard as both sunscreen and sunburn remedy. So share with me kind of your initial interest or discovery with lard in regards to sunscreen and sunburn.
Yeah, well, I think what you're I call it your sun callus. So building your sun callus.
I like that.
It takes a whole lot of words and sort of matches them down to a couple. But yeah, I mean, my experience with lard probably really started when I was a kid. I'm 51. And when I was coming of age, my mom's from Mobile, Alabama, so we would always go spend like a week or two on Mobile Bay, and I can still close my eyes. I can still smell the Panama Jack tanning oil. These were oils,
Yeah.
it's hard to find them anymore, but these were tanning oils. They went on a lot like a baby oil in their
Hmm.
consistency, but it was just basically oil. And again, I can still close it. It was like a coconutty smell. But as it relates to lard, oil is a fat. Lard is a fat. I would say that lard as a standalone fat is not ideally optimal as a UV sun protectant. It's got a natural, I think, SPF value somewhere around 5 to 8, much like those other oils in the past did. So really, when you're talking about sun protection, it does a lot of things. It's skin barrier, all the vitamins, all the minerals. We can unpack that, but it is a natural fat. It is aligned with our biology, and so it does have a natural SPF value. But in terms of preparing for summer, you said it. Like, now's the time of year to get outside. The sun is still getting higher in the sky, regardless of where you live, and build that sun callus. It's really about, it's like going to the gym. You don't go in there and lift, a max weight every day. You work up to it. And so there's a lot of things as it relates to lard. Is certainly beneficial. It's an optimal fat to feed your skin and help protect your skin dermally and transepidermal water loss. That's a really big thing when you're in the sun, and then even after you've been sunburned. And so it really is an optimal fat. But what started it all was sort of half curiosity, half desperation when it came to a sunburn. But what I've learned since then is it is a remarkable fat for helping.
Awesome. So, what are the specific properties of lard that make it effective for sun protection and then sunburn relief? And are they do the same properties help with both, or does it have different properties that lend itself better to more? I got burned, right?
Yep.
Like I didn't have the protective measures or whatnot. So I've got this sunburn. Now what am I doing versus being ahead and using it more as a protective measure?
Yeah, sure. So I would say some of the specific properties of lard, it's got all the properties, but some are more conducive to post-burn relief versus pre-burn protection. Let's start with the protective side. It's super high in cholesterol, super high in saturated and monounsaturated fats, oleic acid, some of the fatty acids that are out there. So it really helps with a healthy skin barrier across the board, especially when you start to stack it up against what I would say are conventional sunscreens. You've got chemicals and preservatives in there that are disrupting your microbiome, right? Our skin is covered in bugs. You can't see them. It's a really thin layer, but it is a layer. It's something between your dermis and the sun. And so I think that is a big factor in terms of with the protection side, is keeping your microbiome intact. It's got all those fatty acids. It's super vitamin rich, and these are naturally metabolized and stored vitamins, not the synthetic stuff that you get in a lot of conventional products. And so that is another, vitamin D, E, A, vitamin K2. These are all, instrumental in, again, promoting skin health. This is both ends of pre-sun and post. I mentioned this earlier on the sunburn side, that transepidermal water loss is a really big deal. And dry skin, quite frankly, is unhealthy skin. And so on the front end, you're locking in the moisture and not disrupting the microbiome. On the back end, you're keeping the moisture in. If anything's ever been in the sun long enough and gets hot, it's that heat is trying to rob your skin of its natural moisture content. And so being able to seal that in, we've mentioned lard. This is where tallow is also immeasurably helpful in sealing. Tallow is going to sit on the surface of your skin more prevalently than lard. Lard's going to soak in, but which is, I mean, we use both products in some of the creams that we make, but those are the big ones. Just the natural saturated and monounsaturated fats, full of cholesterol, full of naturally occurring vitamins and minerals, and then it doesn't have any of the chemicals and the garbage that are endocrine disrupting, but also it doesn't have the water. And again, read the ingredients on your conventional sunscreen. If it's not an oil-based, I would put those above any of the water-based creams. But if the first ingredient is agua, then you've got about 70% water in that formulation. And that emulsification, once you put it on your skin, the water that is in that product is going to evaporate, and it's going to bond to the water that's in your skin, which is ultimately it's going to actually dry your skin out faster, and that's not good when you're in the sun.
No. Well, and if they're using that much water, they have to use preservatives. There aren't any, in my experience, with that high of a water content. There aren't any. Even vitamin E is not enough natural preservative in order to keep mold growth. Like, they have to use
stuff.
Yeah. I was trying to searching for the word there. Yeah. I like you're getting a lot more into the nasty chemicals preservative wise with that water, plus the drying out portion on your skin. I'm really curious, because this is something I heard a lot as a kid, especially in regard to sunburn, but even like regular burns, like if you got too close to the fireplace or burnt yourself on the stove or something. And that was like, oh, don't ever put fat on it, don't ever put oil on it, because you're going to trap the burn in. Have you ever heard that? Like, you're going to trap the heat in? Have you ever heard that?
I haven't, but an old wives' tale like that does not surprise me in the least. Yeah, I've heard it all, but that one doesn't make sense. I mean, aloe's probably if you're going to talk sort of therapeutic recommended remedies, aloe.
Oh, yeah,
my mom would keep an aloe plant.
Yeah,
in the kitchen. Yeah, yep. So the minute you got a burn, you were there. And of course, that's a plant-based fat. It's, again, on the spectrum of bad, good, better, best. It's definitely above bad, and it's pretty. It's nice to have an aloe plant there in the kitchen. But yeah, and animal fat generally is going to be a way better, I guess, ointment, if you will, for any topical situation. We're talking burns today, but I would even say cuts, grazes, bruises. Obviously sanitize the area. If you've had, if the skin barrier breaks, you should sanitize. But then in terms of keeping it clean, animal fat's a remarkable product to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the basis that we use for same. I use for a lot, like skincare, topical. It's just, I was curious if you'd heard the oil thing, because I remember when I first kind of started sharing, like, making homemade, creams and ointments, and infusing them with herbs. And I had so many people who were like, oh no, like, that's going to trap the heat in. And I'm like, I don't think so.
No.
But it is very interesting how some of those wives' tales, it's some of old wives' tales, it's so hard to know, because some of them there is some basis too, and then others you're like, oh no, that one is not at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nothing's going to hold the heat in. I mean, if we're really going to break, nothing's going to hold the heat in outside of like some kind of exogenous bandage or clothing or anything like that. Your skin's going to let the heat off. What you want to do during that heat release, so again, back to sunburn, what you want to do is let the heat out, but keep the moisture in. And so, again, this is where I believe animal fat at large, but certainly lard is an optimal fat to maintain moisture while that sunburn is, I'm going to call it breathing. It's, it's letting out all the exhaust.
Yeah. So can you explain the process of preparing and applying lard as a sunscreen? So, I mean, is it just as simple as taking straight rendered lard and you're putting it on, or have you found, maybe mixing it with some other things, techniques? Kind of walk me through that.
Yeah. So I would say it starts with the render. very low heat. We wet render all of our lard. You want to keep the heat low. You don't want you want as little oxidative stress on any fat really as possible. Fortunately, lard's way up there in sort of that oxidative stress. I think its smoke point's around 400 degrees, but we render wet, so a little water in the dish and low heat. So you want to protect the integrity of the fat as much as you can on the front end. Now, past that, I'm not opposed to just straight lard or leaf lard. Either one works great. Having said that, if you've got botanicals that work for you, I'm a straight lard kind of guy. But I will say there are some. Let's see, you've got, I think it's raspberry oil, carrot seed oil. There's a number of different oils that have some SPF value. So if we're trying to talk about making something pre-sun, obviously you can add the non-nano zinc oxide as a mineral-based sunscreen. A lot of people like to put beeswax in, so maybe a double boiler. You can Google your favorite formula here. I know you want to, there's a formula you can find in terms of the SPF value you're sort of after, but I would encourage people again to sort of take a step back, focus on their sun callus and prep. I would rather see SPF values coming down and more awareness about the sun coming up. And so, I don't care what your SPF value is. If it's noon in July, maybe wear a hat, maybe from 11:30 until 2:30, you're inside with the kids playing a board game or something like that, or at least be more aware about the intensity of the sun, which again speaks to this time of year being a great time of year to build your sun callus. Full sun at noon right now, the UV exposure, just again, because of the angle of the sun in the sky, we're getting close to sunburn season, but we're not quite there. And so it's a really good time to get out there and build out that exposure.
Yeah, I love that. In fact, it's funny, my daughter was letting me know yesterday, she's almost 16, so she tracks these things out. She's like, Mom, UV today is 4. I'm like, thank you. I get my daily UV report.
Yeah. Or you pull up your app, and there's a couple apps now about that. I mean, here's a good rule of thumb, everyone. If your shadow, this is a summer rule. If your shadow, actually it's a year-long rule. If your shadow is taller than you are, you cannot get sunburned. Full stop.
Oh, that's a great rule. That's a great thing to know.
You don't need an app. You don't need an almanac. If your shadow is taller than you are, and I would even say if it's as tall as you are, then again, the angle of the sun in the atmosphere, there's not enough direct UV contact to really give you a sunburn. And so again, this time of year, certainly in winter, your shadow, especially where you live, your shadow is pretty much taller than you are all winter long. And so, but as we get into summer, just pay attention to your shadow. If you don't have much of a shadow, the inverse is also true. The shorter your shadow, the more intense the sun is. And so that's just a really good way. I don't have my watch on, my phone's in the car. You can sort of gauge what's going on with the sun's intensity.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great tip. Talking about the sunburn more aftercare, I'd love to talk a little bit and dive into because I think a lot of, like you said, seek out shade, wear a hat, or even like the sun shirts that are really light and they're breathable, but you can wear light fabric to help if you have to be out like in long, long periods of time. Like there are quite a bit of preventative measures that can be done, but inevitably, I have to say, there probably will come a time, even with all the prevention stuff, that you're going to have some type of sunburn or somebody in the family, that type of thing. So for sunburn use for the sunburn, I'm saying post sun exposure, talking about lard and the potential benefits, it really compared to the conventional after sun products.
Oh, far superior. Again, back to some of the stuff we touched on earlier, chemical, toxin, preservative free. But really, this is where we get into the biological question. Lard is the most similar fat on the planet to human sebum, which is the natural oil our glands produce. If we're talking post sunburn, we're also talking about sort of free radical situation. That UV overexposure is going to really release a lot of free radicals in our skin. And so this gets to the naturally occurring K2 vitamin. But I'm going to take a step back with the lipid profile, the balance of polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, saturated fats in lard is a spot on match to our biology. And so what I like to say is lard's going to give, and again, that K2, reducing the free radical content that's manifested, it's going to give the skin more of whatever it needs, right? Across the board. It's almost like how you fill an electric battery. It's when it needs a lot of power, the power goes in, but it's going to be able to top that thing off and give it what it needs. Again, without all the hormone disruption. Again, the K2, the D, these are again, Melissa, I think one of the biggest tragedies we see this in the food industry, we see it in skincare as well. The idea that someone can say, I grew this vitamin A, which in skincare is called retinol. Mm-hmm. We grew this vitamin A, this synthetic vitamin A, in a lab. And somehow that is the same as naturally occurring, naturally metabolized, and naturally stored vitamin A. And they are completely different on a molecular level. And so for that post sunburn, again, the skin is craving fat. It's craving the cholesterol. It's craving those vitamins. It doesn't understand or recognize what a synthetic version of vitamin K2 or vitamin E is. And so is it going to consume it? Maybe, but not nearly as well. And so especially in a sunburn, post sun exposure environment, it is critical to, as quickly as possible, get that skin fed what it needs. And the goal is to avoid peeling. This was what inspired me to really launch my company, but I never peeled. And if you want to talk about skin health, ultimately in a sunburn environment or any burn, a kitchen burn or anything like that, we're trying to avoid the acceleration of cellular replication, right? And there is no better example of that than your skin peeling, because we got to make more skin if the top layer is coming off. And so that's where I think lard shines, probably more than any one particular other cream or any one particular scenario is in a post sunburn situation. And I would make that also wind burn, razor burn, any type of topical burn. It's going to really stand out.
Okay. Are there any specific types or quality of lard that are recommended for skin care purposes?
What do you mean quality?
So conventional raised hogs, right?
Gotcha.
I mean, at least that's where I'm going. Like, that's where my mind is. Yep. Like, to me, I can't, it would not be, it would have potentially different fats. The animal is under extra stress. So
yep, I understand exactly what you mean. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah, I needed to clarify. Yeah. I would not rub the lard. Okay, so we got to unpack this just a little bit. So you got lard, which is the rendered subcutaneous fat from a pig. I mentioned this earlier, but let's just talk about it. Leaf lard. Again, many of your listeners are probably familiar with tallow. Yeah. Tallow is the rendered visceral fat from most commonly a cow, but any ruminant animal. If you hear the term lard, it's pig specific. So leaf lard is the rendered visceral fat, the kidney fat, leaf fat, it's called, from a pig. And the really cool thing about leaf fat is because of its visceral nature as an organ, it is not a storage organ. It's almost like the airbag for your kidneys, but it sits inside the viscera. And this is important. Again, back to your question, I would make the argument, although I am always going to promote and encourage people to seek out fats from animals that were raised in a hospitable and good environment, especially pigs, because of their monogastric omnivorous nature. But having said that, if you get your hands on some, we'll call it industrial grade leaf lard,
Okay.
you are likely okay, because that pig raised in that, factory farm somewhere,
Right.
all the toxicity and all the poor environment, all of that's going to ultimately get stored in its subcutaneous fat,
Okay.
not its leaf fat. Okay. So, not to encourage people to go do that, but
Amen.
Conventional leaf lard is going to be a better option than all the other skin stuff out there. But the minute you take the leaf out and start talking subcutaneous fat, I would definitely not. Is it better than your store bought stuff? Other skin creams, probably. Because it still doesn't have all the chemicals, but that subcutaneous fat is going to store poor health. It's going to store any antibiotics or hormones or any injection, any of the stuff that happens in the industrial food scene. And so it's best to stay away from that kind of stuff. But again, leaf lard, you could probably get away with, an Amazon purchase or two if you want to play around. But
okay,
please
don't.
Please seek out pastured local, as best if you can shake the farmer's hand that's growing the pigs, then you're already. I don't even care what they eat, honestly. There's a whole scuttlebutt. I mean, that's a piece of the pie, obviously, Melissa, when we talk about animal health.
Right.
But the environment, especially with a pig, man, the environment, sunshine, they're metabolizing vitamin D from the sun the same way we do. Pigs sunburn. We're talking about sunburn, and pigs are one of the handful of animals on the planet that actually get a sunburn in addition to humans. So they've got strategies in place. They've got protocols in place. They've got fat storage in place to mitigate that as best they can. But man, they need that sunshine. So,
yeah. I mean, the leaf lard has always been prized for me as a baker, because it's the most, it's the most neutral, when you're baking with it, like that's what you want. Usually I can render and get a second rendering of the first rendering of non-leaf leaf lard. I can get pretty odorless, pretty close to white, and works fine for baking too.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I'm like, boy, that leaf lard is prized in more ways than one.
Mm-hmm. It's a remarkable fat. I like to fry in it because it's not imparting. There's the Spanish Iberico ham, or the world would be a better place if we could somehow feed every pig on the planet pineapples and acorns every fall, because their fat, their subcutaneous fat, would just taste like a smorgasbord of goodness. But yeah, that's not going to make it. That's why leaf lard is prized as the baking and frying fat, because it's odorless and colorless, because it's, again, metabolically, it's not a storage option. So everything the pig ingests, for better or for worse, is going to end up in the subcutaneous fat. So stay away from store-bought lard.
Got it. We don't have pineapples, but we do apple finish in the fall.
Oh, yeah. Apple, any fruit. I've done peaches before. Yeah. Peaches are more of a spring thing, but if you're hogs are about an 8-month, birth to market weight. And so if you're if you're doing a couple of different farrowings a year, then it actually, that would be the perfect utopian world, as if we had like a batch of pigs ready for every fruit, stone fruit and apple and peach and pear throughout the year as it came into season. Blueberries. Oh my God. Can you imagine a blueberry finished pig? That would be remarkable.
No. I'm actually, now oh my gosh, I must be getting hungry. I'm like, I'm imagining a plum. I'm imagining cherry. I'm like, wouldn't cherry be fabulous?
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Okay. Yeah. Well, we might have to do some brainstorming later and nail down these crops. But back to, though, our lard. Are there any, I guess, precautions or considerations people should be aware of when using lard as sunscreen or for sunburn?
I would say sunburn, no. I mean, just cake it on. Typically, what I'm telling people to put lard on, I tell them to go light. Put a little in your hands, rub it in your hands, and then apply it. In a sunburn situation, I would tell you to go heavy. I mean, it's cake it on. In terms of thoughts on the pre-sun, again, go light. I would even tell you, days in advance of when you're going to be in the sun, just like start building up that moisture barrier. Feed you want your skin full when it goes out in the sun. And so, don't just think about this an hour before you hit the beach. This is, the days or weeks leading up to your beach trip, right? But yeah, a little does go a long way. It's a very, thick's not the, it's just a very full fat. And because there's no water or other things in there, a little will go a long way.
Yeah.
And so I would say pre-sun, put it on really light, wait 10 minutes. If it's gone, then your skin's still thirsty, so give it some more. But definitely feel obliged to cake this stuff on when you've had a sunburn, and that's it. Like, put it on and just sort of hang out in the shade. Find somewhere cool. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water. Make sure you're eating. We got the fat from the pig. Make sure you're also feeding your body with healthy animal fats, healthy animal proteins, giving the inside enough ingredients to feed your skin from the inside out as well. We haven't talked about that, but diet is.
I'm really glad you brought it up, because it was actually the next thing that was going to bring up, because there's a lot of talk and chatter about how much seed oil we have in a standard American diet, or products that you're buying from the store. Like, seed oils are in a lot of things. They're inflammatory, especially in the volume that most folks are consuming them. Just because I don't think a lot of people realize, unless you're an ingredient sleuth, a lot of people don't realize how many things they're eating if they're not making and cooking it from home, right, that do have seed oil in them. So it's kind of like this accumulative effect. But there's a lot of thought that seed oils and the foods that you eat, especially if they are inflammatory and the body is not well nourished, that actually contribute to sunburn or make you more predisposed to getting sunburned, which
Yep.
would make sense if, to your point, if the skin is not fed, or it's a lot of synthetic vitamins. We look at, store-bought flour and almost anything that's store-bought, it says enriched with, well, it's enriched back with synthetic forms. It's in most cases, I should say.
Yeah, our body's ability. So if you know how the RAM of a computer works, right? The RAM is sort of the random there's only so much activity you can have on a computer at any one time. Our body works the same way. And so I would make the argument the two most inflammatory things we are consuming in today's world are sugar in all of its forms, and a lot of these processed seed oils. Those are both highly pro-inflammatory things that we consume. And when you inflame the inside of the body, it's going to triage things. And so the skin and what it can do to promote skin health, or even joint mobility. I mean, there's a million different things that will be downregulated to make sure that your heart's beating and your organs are functioning. Your brain and your organs. And so consuming healthy, real food. I would say an animal protein and fat rich diet. I'm not exclusive on any, although that's pretty much all I eat, but making sure that we're giving ourselves, again, it's the same, all the vitamins, all the minerals, all the natural polyunsaturated, saturated, monounsaturated fats, and then and protein. Protein is the building block of everything. And so making sure you're getting adequate real protein. This isn't plant-based, lab-derived garbage that your body doesn't recognize. And so internally, those things, and to your point, I think trying to exclude as much as you can, or stay away from these seed oils. By the way, those seed oils are a lot of the fats that they're using in the conventional skincare products. So we're getting it on the inside and we're getting it on the outside, and they're so pro-inflammatory. Again, we talked about free radicals. We talked about all these things that our bodies have been coexisting and thriving in the sun for a very long time, and the SPF value that existed 100 years ago was 0. So something is amiss. And
I heard a very fascinating talk, and I implemented it afterwards. It was Dr. Theron Hutton, and it was on everybody uses sunglasses so much these days. And the sunglasses, it's not the same as a hat that provides shade, right? You've got a brim and that provides shade, because most of your sunglasses lenses are UVA and UVB light blockers, right? So they're actually blocking the rays, whereas your hat is providing shade, but it's not blocking it. But what enters into our eyes, so when the sun enters into our eyes and then into our brains, like that is signals to your body, I am in the sun, and to do some of its own protective measures as far as sunburns go, not even getting into our circadian rhythm and our melatonin production, which is a lot of that is by, red light and the sun and all of those very fascinating things as we get into health, but just purely on sunburn. And so I had gotten to the point where I wore sunglasses. I actually naturally wear glasses. I have an astigmatism. I just don't have them on right now because I took them off and I actually can't find them because that's how bad my vision is. Last night, I'm like, I don't know where I took them off. I'll find them later. I'm not driving right now. And, but I had my transition lessons, right? So they just would naturally turn into sunglasses, except when you're driving in the car, because your windshield glass will block the rays that signal. So then I would have regular prescription sunglasses. I mean, I got to the point where I really couldn't even hardly walk outside without needing to squint without sunglasses. And that's because you condition your body to that, and it becomes dependent on them, for lack of a better word. So I did kind of the same thing as we were talking about earlier today, is like exposing your skin bit by bit before the sun is at its full zenith, earlier building a sun callus. So 2.5 years ago now, almost 3 years ago now, I stopped wearing sunglasses, and I did it in winter so that I could slowly build back up. And the only time I ever will wear sunglasses if we're out on the boat on the water where it's reflecting so hard that I've just found if I don't, I'm going to get like a migraine, which is very rare. But I don't even have a pair of sunglasses. I don't need them to drive. I don't get like headaches. I'm not having to squint like where it hurts my eyes. It's just fascinating to me. And so I think there's a lot of factors that have combined that we're seeing, to the point, so many more sunburns than we used to. And a lot of it is environmental. And some of it's even, the convenience of a pair of sunglasses, which seems so benign in use, but it does have an impact on our health.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you brought up again, if you think about our species, and we've spent, thousands of years, the sun has signaled our body to do things, wake us up, circadian rhythms, all that. But even I've heard similar, I haven't heard that particular talk. Maybe you can or was it a talk or an article? I'd love for you to send that to me.
It was at an event, but I'll see if he has anything online. I haven't even checked.
I'm going to make a note. Hutton?
Yeah, Hutton is the last name, and first name is Theron, Theron. Yeah. Anyways, it was fascinating, and so I'm not sure. Anyways, I can connect you.
Well, I've heard a similar. I heard a similar talk. It's been a couple years ago, but the blocking of UV into the eyes. I can't remember if it was we absorb vitamin D through our eyes at a higher rate than we do on our skin, or if it was connecting the signal coming through the eyes was telling the skin, okay, whatever changes you got to make in what you're doing right now, it's vitamin D time. And so the sunglasses were effectively,
blocking that basically is my very rudimentary understanding. Yes. Same.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I agree, and I've done the same thing. I have a pair of sunglasses because I'm not completely poo pooing them, because we do put ourselves in situations this day and age that
Yeah.
didn't even exist, like being on the water. You know, when you got it from
Right.
above and below,
Yeah.
that's kind of rough.
Yeah.
And driving cars really fast into a setting or rising sun is kind of a real pain in the butt. But yeah, a hat goes a long way, and then just develop again your sun callus. You did it. You took it during the winter. You said, I'm going to commit to doing this, and I'm sure it hurt a little bit early on. I'll add one to it: sun staring. So in the morning and in the evening, for all of your listeners, like, just go out and stare at the sun. You can stare right at it. Now, the first couple times you do this, it will feel uncomfortable, but you can do it. It's not hurting your eye in any way, shape, or form. It's just uncomfortable. But man, it's almost like you can feel your body recharging.
Mm.
It's literally like you're plugging your body into the universe, and again, resetting those circadian. All of this stuff, Melissa, you know this. All of this stuff is giving your skin wants to thrive and can thrive in the sun. So we need to get out of the way of that in many respects. Is lard a part of that formula? I believe it is, but there's so much underneath that in terms of just the lower hanging fruit to having optimal sun resilient skin.
Yeah, no, I agree. On that note, have you observed any long-term effects or the benefits of using the lard for sun protection and skin health? And I can't remember from our previous conversations, how long have you been using lard as your primary skin protectant and all those things? I was
Yeah,
trying to remember. I'm like, I don't remember now. I know it's been a
longer
while.
than anybody. I'm breaking the record. No, I've been on the lard wagon now for I'm going to say 5 years. We launched the company a little over. This is our fourth year, so a little over 3 years ago, and of course all the testing and experimentation prior to that. In terms of what I'm noticing, well, for starters, I get compliments all the time on how young I look. So that's helpful. I've been out in the sun a lot, and again, back to old wives' tales. Well, if you spend too much time out in the sun, you're going to look like an old dryer sheet or something like that. An old leather bag.
Yeah.
I do find that today I need less lard to do the same job that hypothetically was done 2 years ago. And so again, just like a healthy diet, gradually you climb the ladder of metabolic health, and so you're more resilient to those mishap moments.
Yeah.
I do believe I am less apt to sunburn. We're going to really test that one out this summer. But yeah, I mean, that's what I've noticed for me. I talk to people that try our products and use them, and they're seeing similar results. But I think it's one of the most optimal fats to give your skin permission to thrive. And so,
Yeah.
I hope
Well,
that answered your question.
yeah, well, and I'm very excited to see there's a lot more growing resurgence of using all the parts of the animal, and this is a way to do that. Because when we see, like, we made, such a switch as a culture or society,
Mm.
when we looked at, when margarine started becoming a thing, when we had all these marketing things and Crisco and so it's really nice to see coming back to the old ways, not just for the sake of coming back to tradition,
Mm-hmm.
but we're actually seeing the honoring of the animals, but also that they are better. It's better for our bodies. And so we've kind of really, as a society, I would say since the 1940s and 50s, mostly unknowingly, I would like to think we've kind of been a part of a really big science experiment when you look at it, humanity as a whole, with what we've been eating and consuming, at least in the United States. What we've been consuming, what we've been putting on our skins, what's in our environment. And I think a lot of that is starting, people's eyes are being opened and looking at some of these things and like, you know, I don't really think that's so great when you just look at the evidence before you, even just the, your own body and your own
Mhm.
families and moving back. And so I'm just really thrilled to have conversations about that the health of the animal as well as us using it that benefits both of us and really honoring the life of that animal and advocating that those animals are raised in a way that's better for their health and also ours. So thanks
Well,
for being a part of that.
absolutely, and I will say, at the foundation of our brand and our company and what we're trying to do, and we talked about this earlier, I encourage everyone, please seek out people that are raising pastured pork, specifically with pigs. Back to utilizing the whole animal, we unpacked this earlier. I'm not a fan of lard from conventionally raised, feedlot CAFO pigs, because I don't think it's a very healthy fat. Again, it's probably better than canola, but this is really, in the U.S., I want to say it's 2.5%, 3% of pigs are raised on pasture. And man, if we can get that number to 5% or 10% just by creating more demand.
Yeah.
And so, part of this is demonstrating to people that if you raise a pig that way, not only does cooking and frying and baking and all those fun things, and obviously the meat is a superfood as far as I'm concerned when you raise the pig properly. But man, as a skincare option, it is a remarkable fat, and frankly, that those animals deserve a better life. And so it's a nice way to honor them, and I appreciate you bringing that up, and certainly the opportunity to come on here and chew the fat, if you will.
Yeah, no, it's always fun. I always end up learning something or having a new insight or aha or just reaffirming like, yes, I mean, like, look at what all of this truly does have to offer to our bodies in so many facets. Oftentimes we think of like, gut health and that health, but thinking of our skin, it truly is our biggest organ.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking of its health, I think oftentimes we think more of internal health a lot of times than we
Mm-hmm.
necessarily do think sometimes about skin health and that external. So, well, Charles, please share with everybody where they can find out more about you, find your products if they don't have access yet, though we hope to see that grow to pasture raised pork or lard. But that they've got a resource with you right now. So please do share where folks can find out more.
Yeah, our website is Farrow, FARROW.life. And on Instagram, we just made an Instagram switch page, so I'm excited. It's Farrow.skincare is our new Instagram page. We're trying to fight the algorithms a little bit and spread the lard. But those are the two best places to find us. And for anyone that is interested, we do have a Melissa15 as a code to save 15% off any of our products. But those are the two best places. I'll say a third. Farrow's Skin, at Farrow's Skin on X is the other big platform we're on. But yeah, it's love everything you're doing. Was excited that you wanted to sort of unpack sun care, and the lard is definitely a cog in the wheel of optimal sun relationship. So glad we could talk about it.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to put it to use this summer. In fact, I have plans to go enjoy this rare warm afternoon sun here. So maybe I'll throw a little bit on before I go out.
Roll a little. Well,
Yeah.
now's the time to build your summer
start,
callus.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Get outside, folks.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Charles.
Thank you, Melissa.
I hope that you found this episode as interesting as I did and are going to take some of these things to put into practice on your skin and on your homestead this year. The way that podcasts grow and the way that we get more of this information out is by people listening and sharing. So if you found this interesting and of value, if you would just simply take this link and text it to a friend or share it on social media, then we will get the word out and get more and more people on a more natural route. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to being back here with you next week. Blessings and mason jars for now, my friends.